This 1859 portrait of a Virginia plantation family looks calm at first, until you notice what one of the servants is holding. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was at the Virginia Historical Society, standing in a temperature-controlled archive, focused on a photo that had arrived just a few days earlier in an unmarked box. The old photograph showed the Ashford family from Richmond, Virginia. They were posed in front of their plantation house, dressed up and formal. Jonathan Ashford sat in the middle with his wife next to him, their 3 kids carefully arranged nearby. Behind them, 5 enslaved house servants stood in uniform, barely visible. As Sarah studied the image with a magnifying glass, afternoon sunlight lit the archive room. At first glance, the photo looked like a typical Southern family portrait from before the Civil War, wealthy landowners showing off their lifestyle. But something about one of the servants stood out to her. The woman wasn't standing quite like the others. Her face was turned slightly, and something about her posture didn't match the rest. Sarah looked closer and froze. The woman was holding something. In her right hand, partly hidden by her dress, was a tightly folded piece of paper. It wasn't a trick of light or a photo flaw. It was definitely there. Sarah's heart sped up after looking at hundreds of plantation-era photos. She'd never seen a servant holding anything in a formal portrait. Everything in those photos was carefully arranged to send a specific message. This was different. She grabbed her camera and took high-resolution photos, focusing on the woman's hand. The paper couldn't be explained away. It was real. This changes everything, Sarah whispered to herself. The next morning, she started digging into the Ashford family's history. Records showed Jonathan Ashford owned a tobacco plantation called Riverside Manor in 1859, where 47 enslaved people lived and worked. He was a well-known figure in Richmond, on the city council, and a regular at St. John's Episcopal Church. The photo had been taken by Marcus Webb, a traveling photographer who worked across Virginia between 1855 and 1861. Records in the Library of Virginia confirmed the date, August 14, 1859. Sarah looked at more of Webb's work, dozens of plantation portraits, but none showed servants holding anything. In all of them, the enslaved people were just background, there to show off the owner's wealth, not their own lives. Back at her desk, she used software to enhance the original image. The object in the woman's hand came into sharper focus. The paper was folded many times, small enough to hide, but big enough to write on. Sarah called her colleague, Dr. Marcus Reynolds, who specialized in the history of enslaved resistance. He got to the archive within an hour. As soon as he saw the photo, he looked intrigued. "That's intentional," Marcus said, adjusting his glasses. "She's holding that just right so the camera would catch it, but not make it obvious to anyone in the room at the time." Who was she? Sarah wondered. Marcus pulled up plantation records on his laptop. According to the 1860 census, there were 7 enslaved women working in the main house, but no names, only ages and brief descriptions. They looked again at the woman in the photo. She seemed to be in her mid-30s, tall, with strong features and eyes that seemed to look straight at the camera and through time. The next day, Sarah drove to Richmond. It was hot in August, just like it would have been back in 1859. Riverside Manor was gone. A highway now covered the land where the plantation used to stand. But the Richmond Museum of the Confederacy held documents from the Ashford family. An elderly archivist named Dorothy brought Sarah to a small research room and handed her 3 boxes. "People don't ask for this collection much," Dorothy said. "Mostly business records and legal stuff." Sarah sifted through letters, supply orders, and financial records. Jonathan's handwriting was neat. He'd carefully tracked crop numbers, prices, and listed enslaved workers as property, valuing them like livestock. Then she came across a letter dated September 1859, just a month after the photo was taken. Jonathan had written to his brother in Charleston, "We've had troubling incidents. Some of the house staff have been behaving oddly. I've increased supervision and limited their movement. Whatever ideas they've picked up need to be dealt with before they spread." Sarah snapped a photo of the letter. Something had clearly happened in that short time. What had Jonathan noticed? What had that picture captured that wasn't obvious at first? She kept looking and found a bill of sale from October 1859. Jonathan had sold 3 enslaved women to a buyer in New Orleans. It was a common way to remove people seen as troublemakers. The sale happened quickly and for less than the going rate. Dorothy came back with a cup of tea. "Find anything interesting?" she asked. "Maybe," Sarah replied. "Are there any Ashford family members still living nearby?" "Yes." Dorothy nodded. "Elizabeth Ashford Monroe. She's in her 80s and lives in the Fan District. Her family donated these papers in the 70s. Elizabeth Ashford Monroe lived in a narrow yellow Victorian townhouse. She welcomed Sarah into a cozy room filled with antiques and old photos. At 83, she moved slowly but spoke clearly. "My family's past isn't something I'm proud of," Elizabeth said as she settled into a chair. "But I believe in being honest about it." Sarah showed her the 1859 photo on a tablet. Elizabeth adjusted her glasses and studied it carefully. "I've never seen this before," she said. "My grandfather, Jonathan's grandson, destroyed most of the old plantation photos. He said the past was better left buried." "Do you know why?" Sarah asked. "There were stories," Elizabeth said, putting the tablet down. "Something happened in 1859. It scared Jonathan badly. My grandmother told me once that some of the servants were planning something dangerous, and he caught wind of it just in time." "What kind of plan?" "She didn't say exactly, but she mentioned a woman named Clara who worked in the house. Clara was smart, taught herself to read by sneaking books. When Jonathan found out, he had her sold, along with 2 others. Sarah felt a jolt. "Clara, do you remember anything else about her?" Elizabeth stood and walked to an old desk. She took out a small leather journal. "This belonged to my great-great-grandmother, Margaret, Jonathan's wife. She kept short diary entries. I only read it once. It was hard to get through." She opened it to a page from August 1859. "Jay commissioned the family portrait today." It read, "The photographer worked quickly, though I noticed Clara standing oddly, holding herself with unusual tension. Jay brushed off my concerns." Another journal entry, dated September 12, 1859, read, "Jay sold Clara, Ruth, and Diane today. He claims they were influenced by abolitionist ideas and could be a danger to our safety. I'm relieved, but also unsettled. Clara always served us faithfully." Sarah then reached out to the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati. She spoke with Dr. James Washington, an expert on resistance efforts among enslaved people in the Upper South. She emailed him the enhanced photo of Clara holding the paper. He called back within hours, sounding urgent. "Sarah, this is huge. Do you know what this could be?" "Tell me," she replied. In 1859, Virginia was on edge. John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry happened that October, just 2 months after this photo. But the planning started long before. Underground railroad networks were active in Richmond, helping people escape and pass along information. "You think Clara was part of that?" "Look at the timeline," James said. "The photo was taken in August. By September, Clara's behavior was discovered. Then in October, she's sold. Then comes John Brown's raid. If Clara was part of any resistance or communication network, and her master found out, he would have acted fast." Sarah felt the puzzle coming together. The paper Clara held could have been a message, a map, names, directions. "It's possible," James said. "People found all kinds of ways to hide information. A formal family photo wouldn't raise suspicion. No one would look closely at a servant's hand. It's actually brilliant." He explained that Richmond had a strong network of free black residents and white allies helping enslaved people escape. Messages often moved through household staff who had more mobility than field workers. "So how do I find out what was written on that paper?" Sarah asked. "You probably can't, not directly," James said, "but you might be able to trace what happened to Clara after she was sold. Some Louisiana slave market records survived. And if she stayed active in the resistance, abolitionist archives might hold clues." Sarah took detailed notes. "Where should I start?" "Try the Amistad Research Center in New Orleans," he said. "They've got records of people sold through those markets. Also check with the Friends Historical Library in Philadelphia. The Quakers documented a lot about the Underground Railroad. Sarah flew to New Orleans on a hot, sticky September morning. The Amistad Center was located in a modern building on the campus of Tulane University. Inside were records of people who had been bought and sold through the largest slave market in the U.S. Dr. Patricia Green, the center's director, met Sarah in her office. The fall of 1859 was chaotic, Patricia explained. After John Brown's raid, slaveholders in the Upper South panicked. They started selling off anyone they thought might be a threat, especially smart or rebellious house servants. She pulled up digital records on her computer. You said the sale was in October 1859? Patricia asked. Yes. 3 women from Richmond, Clara, Ruth, and Diane, sold by Jonathan Ashford. Patricia typed quickly, searching the database. Here it is. October 28, 1859. 3 women, ages 34, 28, and 41, sold to a man named Jacques Beaumont, who owned a sugar plantation in St. James Parish. Sarah leaned closer. Are there any details, descriptions, medical notes? Patricia clicked through more documents. Yes. The notary noted that one of the women, age 34, had unusual scarring on her hands. It looked like burn marks, often a sign of someone punished for handling forbidden items, like books or papers. That could be Clara, Sarah said quietly. There's more, Patricia added. 6 months later, in April 1860, Beaumont filed a report with the local sheriff. One of the women he'd bought from Virginia had escaped. He described her as intelligent, literate, and potentially dangerous. Did they catch her? Sarah asked. Patricia shook her head. There's no follow-up. Either she got away, or Beaumont didn't pursue it. By 1860, some owners stopped reporting runaways. It made them look weak and encouraged others to flee. From New Orleans, Sarah flew to Philadelphia to visit the Friends Historical Library, home to Quaker records dating back centuries. There she met with Thomas Miller, who specialized in Underground Railroad research. I've been digging into this since your call, Thomas said, leading her into a quiet research room. The spring of 1860 was intense. After John Brown was executed in December, Underground Railroad activity increased. People wanted to carry on his mission. He spread out several documents, letters, journals, and coded lists used by Quaker conductors to track people in transit. There were 3 major escape routes from Louisiana, Thomas explained. The most successful ran through Texas, north of Missouri, then into Iowa or Illinois. He pointed to a journal entry from May 1860, written by a Quaker named Rebecca Walsh. Received 3 travelers from the Gulf region. 2 men, 1 woman. The woman showed signs of hard labor but had impressive education and spoke of unfinished business. Could that be Clara? Sarah asked. Possibly, Thomas replied. Rebecca was operating in southeast Iowa then. Her notes used code, travelers, men escapees. Gulf region meant Louisiana or Mississippi. He pulled out another document, a letter Rebecca had written to a fellow conductor in Philadelphia. The woman from Virginia has been invaluable. She knows the names of Richmond contacts and routines inside prominent homes. She wants to go back to help others, though she knows the risk. Sarah photographed the papers carefully. Did she return to Virginia? There's no definite proof yet, Thomas said. But later correspondence mentions a woman working as a conductor in Richmond in late 1860 and early 1861. Someone who knew how to move through wealthy households without raising alarms. He showed one last note, dated December 1860, from a conductor's ledger. See, reports successful passage of 4 individuals from the Ashford connection. Message delivered. At the University of Richmond, advanced imaging revealed that the paper in Clara's hand wasn't blank. It held a rough map and coded symbols used by Underground Railroad networks. The markings linked to 3 real people in Richmond, James Washington, Mary Connor, and Robert Lewis, all later confirmed as helpers in escape routes. An 1861 report labeled Clara a threat for aiding runaways. An 1865 record confirmed she survived the war and helped Union forces. Her hidden map turned the photo into a symbol of resistance.